Hey Sam,
Hey, Steve.
how you doing?
Wonderful. How about you?
Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you.
JZ, good to see you. How's it going?
How you doing, Steve? Good to see you.
Good, buddy. Good. Hey Teresa, how are you?
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Very good. Very good. I'm doing well, thank you. Oh, I just saw Terry. Hey Terry, how are you doing?
Good.
Good. Hey Matt, welcome. Philip, welcome. Brian, welcome.
Well,
I
thanks.
saw Fred for a moment. There's Brian waving. Bill, welcome. Terry Fields, I see your picture, but I don't see you. You're doing well. Oh, there she is. Hey Terry, how you doing? Very good. Good to see you. Mr. McDonald's out there. I see him unmuted, but I don't see him.
Morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning. Good morning. Sherry, good morning. Welcome. Gruber, welcome. Carrie, welcome. I'm looking around my camera. That's why I'm squirming. Sorry, guys. I'm squirming. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today's presentation.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
let's see. I have to mute a few people.
Yeah, if we can just, if everyone could just go on mute, that would be helpful.
I have not.
If not, then I'll just go on ahead and mute in Zoom.
Just mute. Just
Okay.
mute.
Okay.
Just mute. Does anyone, because there's a lot of people joining, I don't think they're aware that they're unmuted and we get to hear whatever they're talking about. And the last thing we want to do is have a lawyer share something that's privileged while he's talking to his assistant about a case that's being broadcast across the country. So that's my fear. I don't mind the interruption, but I'm more concerned about someone accidentally disclosing something that they probably don't want to be disclosing as they join a presentation on anxiety, because that would produce even more anxiety for me as a lawyer. That would be like the last thing I want to have happen. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to this wonderful 30-minute presentation on anxiety and the law, which is really focused on us attorneys as practitioners and how to think about anxiety and how to manage it in our practice. And while there's probably 10 critical strategies to think about with anxiety, I picked 3 of my favorites that are fairly easy to implement to work on today. But first, for those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Steve Riley. I am first and foremost an attorney. I spent 10 to 12 years of my career doing litigation, trial work, plaintiff's work, and then switched, long story, into estate planning and elder law. I did that for another 10 to 12 years, and then I sold my practice and joined this wonderful company called Atticus. And I've been here for 10 years. I've been running around the legal community for 30, 35 plus years, and have a great appreciation for what it takes not only to build a law practice, but actually to operate in a joyful way, in a happy way inside your law practice. Wrestle with, and that's why I get really excited about this. Our company, Atticus, is founded over 30 years ago, and really our whole goal is twofold. We help lawyers grow great practices and ultimately to live great lives. And one of the mistakes I've seen in my career, and I made early in my career, was I just focused on building a great practice. And a lot of lawyers will build phenomenal practices but have miserable lives, and they'd be miserable human beings. So our recommendation is go for the double win from the very beginning. Build a great life and a great practice at the same time. So that's really what we're focused on today. My intention is today is to have you have a breakthrough in thinking about anxiety and introduce 3 strategies for you to think about how to manage and reduce stress and anxiety in your life. Now, why do we talk about anxiety as lawyers? I mean, we're trained to handle very complicated problems. We're trained to handle a lot of different things. We're really, in some cases, helping people through the worst parts of their lives: divorce, arrest, accidents, deaths. So we really deal with people going through high levels of stress themselves. And so we kind of have a little bit of a reflective stress, because there's nothing quite as dealing with somebody who's going through a high stress period of their life. Now, In addition to that, we're running a practice. And so when you go to run a practice, you typically have 3 challenges to run a practice. One, staying focused and productive. Staying focused and productive, focused on your highest and best use at all times, which is a very big challenge. It's a very big challenge. 2 is keeping your team, which is in itself a whole other challenge, focused and productive and sane, and getting new clients and managing your cash flow. So when you start thinking about it, these are some interesting challenges to grow a practice. You got to stay focused. You got to help manage and keep your team focused. You got to make sure that you're doing the highest and best use of everyone's time. You got to get great new clients, and you've got to manage your business and manage cash flow. So all this alone would be stressful, but you're actually helping people at the worst point. Some of you are helping people at the worst point of their life. And so these emotions show up for us. These emotions show up for us, and these emotions will look like the following things. They will look like restlessness, where you have difficult time holding still and being in one place. You'll definitely feel tension and stress and sometimes panic. There are quite a few lawyers that are friends of mine that have had panic attacks that they thought were heart attacks. Irritability. Now, if you don't think you're irritable, ask the people in your life who love you if you're irritable when you're stressed. I would use that as a stressed test. Just say to your spouse or to your kids, when I get stressed, am I irritable or am I just a wonderful human being to be around? I would test that theory. Sleeping difficulty. So for me, when I'm worried about something, I have a very difficult time sleeping. I'm worried about doing a good job today, so I woke up early, about 4 o'clock in the morning, mulling over the presentation, trying to figure out how to make it really, really great. And consequently, my concentration levels go down. Oh, we've got someone who just joined us. There we go. Beautiful, thank you. And consequently, when you do that, you also start to have some issues. Now, if you're having anxiety becomes almost like a normal everyday occurrence. The problem is if you don't learn how to manage it, it moves to the next level, which is chronic anxiety. And the worst thing for a lawyer to have with chronic anxiety is impaired judgment, because at the end of the day, that's what people are hiring you for. They're hiring you to make good judgment calls based on their case. So your judgment, your ability to think and make a good cognitive call on their behalf is absolutely critical. 2, your body starts to pay the price. And you start to cut your lifespan because you're not managing the impact. 3, you don't have great thinking. You have unclear thinking. Your attitude gets pretty crappy. My experience with a lot of lawyers is they start to have an abusive relationship with their law practice. They start getting to a resentment of their law practice. So they don't go into practice being happy, they go into practice being resentful. And their attitude then infects their entire staff. And the people that have a good attitude leave. The people with a bad attitude that like a grouchy person to be around stay. Consequently, being in that environment, you have a shortened life expectancy, and this is exhausting. It gets exhausting. You get worn out. And so you just get in this constant vicious loop of exhaustion. So this is kind of why we have a topic and why we've been talking about anxiety and stress for the past 30 years, is because it costs you a lot. But why and where does it come from? So I just want to spend a couple of minutes to talk to you about how your brain works. Your brain loves anxiety. Your brain is wired for anxiety. Your brain doesn't care if you're happy. Your brain's designed to do one thing and one thing alone. That's to keep you alive. Your brain is not wired for your happiness. It's wired for your survival. And consequently, your brain is always on alert for anything it perceives as risk. In the back of your head, there's this thing called your amygdala. Now, how I remembered the difference between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex is my sister's name is Amy, and Amy has caused me stress in my life. Therefore, it's easy for me to remember Amy amygdala as a part of being stress in my life. My sister sometimes causes me stress, so Amy amygdala is really designed to keep you alive. So if you're driving and someone comes at you and you move really quickly, it's where your amygdala gets control of your brain and says, that's a threat, I need to handle it. And it's always looking for threats, whether the low threats or high threats. And that's all it's doing. It's your brain's constantly got this software going called your amygdala looking for threats. The problem is your brain doesn't know the difference between a low-level threat or a high-level threat, meaning that whether a saber-toothed tiger is jumping out at you from behind a bush or a opposing counsel writes you a really, really nasty, mean email. Your body responds the same way. All right, it has the same hormonal response to a threat, regardless whether it's a physical threat or an emotional threat. Now, the flip side of this is your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is the part that your clients pay you for. That's the judgment part. That's the critical thinking part. That's where your clients want you to live. They don't want you to live in the back of your head with the lizard brain, with the amygdala. They want you in the front with the prefrontal cortex, because that's your problem-solving part of your brain. Now, your brain, and I use this teeter-totter example for those of you that are looking at the screen, it's a teeter-totter. And I use a teeter-totter because what you want to do to reduce stress is engage the prefrontal cortex and calm down the amygdala. And the three strategies that I'm going to introduce are strategies that have been proven through books on how your brain works, proven through books on stress, proven through books on anxiety. There are three shortcuts to, you don't need to read the books, I'll just give you the shortcuts, to reduce anxiety and reduce stress. And that's really what we're going to focus on, these three quick shortcuts that are designed to help you. Now, the thing I want you to remember, though, is the teeter-totter. What you're trying to do is reduce the impact of your prefrontal cortex. Increase the impact of your prefrontal cortex, and reduce the impact of your amygdala. So that's what you're trying to do. The whole strategy is go to get the teeter-totter to flip. We reduce the stress, we engage the prefrontal cortex. Everybody got that? So that's what we're trying to do. We want the prefrontal cortex to engage, the amygdala to decrease. Once that happens, the brain goes, okay, cool, you got this. You got this. I don't have to worry about this particular issue. You got this. So I'm going to teach you the three strategies. Here's our three strategies. The first one is going to take a few minutes. It's going to seem incredibly simple, but it's actually a little bit complicated. So the first one is to transform anxiety into fear. Now I'll walk you through it. So this strategy, and what you want to do is, if you're taking notes, is write this down. Name it to tame it. Name it to tame it. Because what you're trying to do is take the anxiety and confront and transform it to a known fear. So if you compare the two, anxiety is an emotional experience where it's fuzzy, you can't say specifically what it is, you run in circles, you're exhausted, and it avoids any form of accountability measurement. You can see this with clients that are in high stress events. These clients are freaked. They're not really sure what to do, and they keep talking in circles. It's because they're in an anxiety loop. To help them land the plane, you have to help them clarify the real issue. There's two ways to engage the prefrontal cortex to do this, and I'll tell you what they are in a second, but I want you to understand the difference between the two. With fear, you know what the threat is. You know what the threat is, you know what the problem is you got to solve. It energizes you to make progress, and it requires some type of accountability action. But here's how to remember the two. If you think about the ocean and your prefrontal cortex is not in control, but your amygdala is in control, your amygdala is going to be scanning at the ocean and say, there's problems out there. There's octopuses, there's sharks, there's squids, there's barracudas. There's bad things in the ocean. You know, I saw the movie Jaws. I know what it's about. I know what this is about. It's scary. Now, until you specifically identify what the fear is, in this case, a shark, your brain continues an anxiety loop. However, once you identify the fear, now you know what the problem is and you can identify it. And that's why when it comes to understanding anxiety, your best move when you're anxious is get behind the anxiety and figure out what the heck it is you're really afraid of. What am I really afraid of here? What am I really, really scared of? And you've got to name it to tame it. So fear is actually easier to conquer than anxiety. Anxiety is a black hole. It got no end to it. It will continue to keep scanning, squeezing adrenaline. It will keep doing all these horrible things to your brain. But anxiety is a black hole. And so if you think about this, fear is known. Fear is known. Anxiety is unknown. And so as a lawyer, one of the most important things you need to do is to think about, okay, I want to engage my prefrontal cortex to help me solve the problem. I don't want to hang out in anxiety, all right? That's what you don't want to do. You don't want to be in a position where you're hanging out in anxiety. You want to be focusing that prefrontal cortex. So what's the strategy? What's the strategy? If you know anxiety is an endless treadmill and fear is just a hurdle, how do you jump over the hurdle? Two ways, two very, very simple ways. They're so simple that you'll probably not do them. But here they are. One is to handwrite what you're afraid of. Your motor skills are wired to your prefrontal cortex. So once you start handwriting what you're afraid of, your brain starts engaging the prefrontal cortex. It flips the teeter-totter and puts the prefrontal cortex in charge. This is why those of you that are clients have been to our programs, I have you write and then speak about what the issue is you're wrestling with. I'm trying to get your amygdala to calm down, and I'm trying to get your prefrontal cortex to engage. So the most important strategy here is to actually name it, to tame it. I don't care if you write on scrap paper, I don't care if you do it on what, it doesn't matter, but you have to handwrite, not type. Handwrite, and that's the key element of this. Most of the studies show that the handwriting is critical to engage the prefrontal cortex, all right? So you go immediately to handwriting, pencil, paper, whatever it takes, but handwrite. And it must be in your handwriting to tame it. Once you tame it, you can then speak about it. So if you talk to someone, you want to talk to somebody about that, which engages the other part of your brain, the other part, one of the motor skills that engages the prefrontal cortex is speaking. So if you're dealing with anxiety, and this is so simple, it's one of the things that we've taught our clients for years. It's one of the things we encourage people to do. Plan your day in your own handwriting. So when you come into the office and you're overwhelmed with email, overwhelmed with phone calls, overwhelmed with chasing cash flow, overwhelmed because somebody didn't show up to work, and you've got a day in front of you, and you're accountable to taking care of clients, and you're accountable to getting ready for a hearing, and you're accountable for certain things, you can spend 5 minutes to write out what are the most important things for you to do that day. And I usually go for 3. This is a day, a scan of a day out of our planner. We call it the My Great Day planner. And this is an example. So if you want to, and we'll give you, you have access to this recording, but I usually go, well, it'd be a great day if, and the reason that we do this is that the handwriting immediately engages the prefrontal cortex. I make you decide, the worksheet makes you decide what the focus is. You got to focus on the 3 most important things, the 3 big rocks of your life for that day. And the top 3 action tells you the things that you have to do to prioritize. It immediately comes to the top. And it gives you kind of a self-accountability tool to move things along. So this is a critical element, and it's why we've integrated this type of planning tool in all of our clients and all of our workshops and all of our one-on-one coaching, is because if I can get a client to spend the day to plan, just 5 minutes, 15 minutes, however long it takes, a 5-minute to focus activity, their stress will actually go down, their prefrontal cortex will get engaged, and they'll have a plan of action, and they'll feel successful at the end of the day. Now, my recommendation is use it daily from start to finish. I begin my day with this and I end my day with this. I plan out my next day usually at the end of the day. I do a little gratitude exercise, write down my wins for the day, and it's a fantastic completion tool. Now, we give these to our clients as part of the program. If you're interested in more information about this, is great. You can go to this link and check it out on our website. But for some of you, you're like, I ain't buying this. I'm not so sure if this will work. I've given you a free tool. I've just given you a free tool so you can try this in your own life and see if it works. Abby is going to post this into the chat box, and it's just a basic we call it the Atticus Daily Focuser. It's just a very, very simple tool. You post it, you just fill out your day. I've given you 2 of them when he teaches for us, which is Mark Metzger. And so I gave you an example of his worksheet. So, it's when he's had a great day, he's completed it. So we're posting those in the chat box to create your own, whatever works. Now, if a day works from a planning perspective, the next move for you is actually to go to a week. So if you're good with a day, my suggestion is block time Monday morning to plan out your week in writing what your week's going to look like, okay? So that's strategy one. It's engaging the prefrontal cortex by handwriting and planning the day simple, elegant, impactful, and stress reduction. Two, and this is the one most lawyers hate, just absolutely hate, fight us tooth and nail on this, take time off. And time off is important because you have to recover, and your brain is like any other muscle. It takes a moment to recover. It needs some recovery time. Take time off. Now, when we're talking time off, it is a definition of particular time off. So for us, time off is a 24-hour window minimally of no emails, no phone calls, no work-related activity. So a day off is not checking email. A day off is not returning phone calls. A day off is not doing anything work-related. It's really designed to give you the ability to recover, to actually recover and allow your brain to heal. So what happens when you take times off is that your judgment improves, your efficiency and effectiveness jump. My suggestion is, because a lot of us don't know how to plan days off, one of the big things is one of our coaches and long-term clients, Kimberly, tells a joke that when she first started taking time off, she realized she had no friends, no hobbies, and nothing fun to do. So it may take a while for some of you to go, but what does a day look like? How I started taking time off, and this sounds silly, is my wife and I created movie days. So we would go to the movies. We would go to a morning movie, a matinee movie, and an evening movie, because it's the only thing I could do to stay focused for a whole day on not work activity. So it was one of the recovery techniques that come off. But it's critical for your brain to catch a break. And it improves your judgment, improves your function. All right, so taking time off is important for you to perform at a higher level. There's a tremendous amount of studies that show that if you don't take the time off, your cognitive ability and function actually declines over time. So if you're trying to improve cognitive function, you actually have to take time off as a strategy to improve cognitive function. Number three, this is my favorite. It's going to be simple, going to be easy. Most of you will reject it. It's totally cool. Develop a daily gratitude practice. Your brain loves anxiety. It's wired for it. Brain doesn't care if you're happy or alive. Your brain is using gas all the time. It's one of the reasons it hates change, because it's trying to preserve as much glucose as it can in case it's threatened by something that tries to eat you. And so your amygdala is constantly scanning for threats. And if you're not aware of this, you will basically hopefully be aware of it after our presentation here. And consequently, you're exhausted and miserable. So you have a battle in your head all the time. I'm going to give you a great antidote for this. The antidote is a gratitude practice. If your brain doesn't have anything to focus on, it defaults to anxiety, because that's your default wiring. It defaults to scanning for trouble. Brain doesn't care if you're joyful, happy, or grateful. It just wants you alive. Your amygdala is constantly looking. It's a software that will never turn off, and it's reactive, and the inertia for this is easy. This is one of the reasons I got off of TV about 4 years ago. I quit watching any form of TV about 4 years ago, so I've been on a 4-year, soon to be a 5-year hiatus from any form of television, because I'm trying to protect my focus and manage what impacts my anxiety levels. Gratitude, on the other hand, is fantastic as an antidote to anxiety, because gratitude requires a proactive practice of you looking for something that you're grateful for. And the funny thing about your brain, it can't hold anxiety and gratitude at the same time. It can't. You can't be anxious and grateful. You can either be grateful or anxious. And that's the fascinating thing about this. So you have to decide, if you're going to develop a practice as an antidote to anxiety, how do you do this? And so you must learn it from cultivating practices. And it's kind of like working out, it's kind of like working out. You choose it, you earn it, it requires a daily habit, and you feel happy, joyful, and you start to have a better quality life. Now, to help you with that, I'm going to give you a way of doing this. And I'm going to give you, and Abby's going to post this in our chat box. I'm going to give you our Atticus Daily Gratitude Challenge worksheet. And it's very simple, okay? And it's got a little quote on it that I came up with, is that you can drown in anxiety or swim in gratitude. It's your call. And what this is something that you can print out directly on your printer, black and white color, but it's a foldable printer. You can fold it out. And I recommend that you print it, fold it, and carry it. You put it in your pocket, you put it on your planner, you put it on your desk. You can share with people that you care about. You can create a game with your family of things that they were grateful for during the day. I've done this with my kids and my spouse. My spouse and I do it. My wife and I do this every night. And you get to spread the gratitude. Now, the beautiful thing about spreading gratitude is it gives you the capability of being surrounded with happy people. So if you think about it, it's a really wonderful way of investing into your own happiness, because you're proactively cultivating others people being grateful and happy around you. So it's like a farmer investing into fertile soil. So you start to become a leader and a change agent in your own family, in your own practice, and with your own referral sources of being a gratitude practice, just a very simple gratitude practice. So as we have about 3 minutes left and 2 minutes left, and I've got a phenomenal level of things to talk about. We are doing a deeper dive workshop on this on the 3rd of May. It's going to be a 90-minute workshop. If you're interested, we're giving people that attend this program a half-off coupon. It's basically Stress 50 is the coupon code. You can see it there, and you can get in to do this workshop for $49 for 90 minutes. Now, the purpose of this workshop is to give you the capability of doing a deeper dive. There's about 7 other strategies we didn't do. I'm going to do a deeper dive on some of these topics, but the purpose behind this is to do a much more interactive, deeper dive on how to develop gratitude, how to reduce anxiety, and we'll probably do a little bit more discussion around gratitude as a technique or practice. Now, as we come to a quick close, what I'm going to do is I would be grateful if you would take a moment to post in the chat box what your takeaway was from today's presentation, because today was a fantastic sprint on 3 strategies to reduce your anxiety, and a real quick way of hoping to help you to reduce your own anxiety. So we'd love any feedback that you could give us on how this worked for you. If you'd like to email us any improvement ideas, we're also open to that as well. And if there are any final thoughts or questions, I'd be delighted to use those. To take those. And I would also give you a couple of quick resources. Our planner, which we talked about, is a phenomenal tool to start to organize your thinking. There's a lawyer by the name of Jenna Chow, who wrote a book called The Anxious Lawyer, but it's basically a wonderful book on meditation for lawyers. And then we have a wonderful little presentation, on our website on self-care strategies for lawyers that came out of the COVID conversation. And so those are pretty cool. Those are 3 quick resources I can send you to support you. Now with that, I don't want to hold anybody beyond where they need to be, because my rule of thumb is to keep right on time with you. But if there's any last minute questions or anything I do to support you or help you, by all means, let us know, and we could be happy to help those.
Steve, there is a quick question in the chat box from Terry. She just asked, how do you manage social media when it comes to anxiety and stress? What do you do about social media?
That's fantastic, Terry. That's a great question. I am purposeful when it comes to social media. I get very, very clear on what I'm doing on social media. And some people use social media for entertainment. I try not to use it for self-entertainment. So when you go onto social media, you have to realize you're kind of putting your emotional head in a blender. And so you have to be careful with that. My only antidote that I have for you is to put yourself on a social media diet. And I know that's contrary to how a lot of people think and say things, but I think that you want to be purposeful in what you're doing on social media. And if you have a gratitude practice, maybe one of the fun things that you could do on your social media is to share with people what you're grateful for that day. and cultivate a social media practice. I mean, cultivate a way of sharing your gratitude via social media. So great question. Yeah, and the gratitude, you posted the gratitude worksheet, didn't you, Abby? Okay, great, thank you. So that's pretty simple. You can print that out, comes right off your printer, and you can create that. I usually have 3 or 4 stacks of those floating around, and it works wonderfully. So, and well, one quick tip on that. One of the things that people sometimes say is, hey, look, I put down the same thing that every day. One of the things I write down that I'm grateful for, I keep repeating it. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I have coffee with my wife almost every morning. And Johnny Cash, the late great country singer, once asked what heaven was, and he goes, well, I had it this morning. I had coffee with my wife. And so for me, having a few minutes with my wife, having coffee before the day starts, is heaven for me. It's a wonderful thing. That makes my gratitude list almost every single day. I'm not trying to win at gratitude. I'm trying to presence gratitude. I'm trying to create gratitude. And the great thing about gratitude is that gratitude leads to joy. And then as you get more gratitude and the more grateful you are, the more joy you'll presence in your life. So that's a wonderful thing about this particular practice. So I want to share that tip with you real quick. Abby, anything else? I don't want to keep anybody any longer than we need to. I'm happy to stay and answer any questions or talk about anything. Okay, with that, I'm going to thank everybody. If you're interested in spending some more time with us next week, we'll be delighted to do that. Leroy Peterson, good to see you. Terry, good to see you. It's good to see some friends out there that I haven't seen in a while. We got a lot of people here today. Terry, you're unmuted. Anything that you want to add real quick?
Yeah, we don't see the gratitude sheet in the chat, and there's a couple people asking for it. Abby, can you repost it?
I just reposted it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
If you don't get it, just email marketing@atticusadvantage.com and we can make sure we get it to you. Okay? And with that, I just want to say thanks for spending a 30-minute little sprint on anxiety with me, and have a fantastic day, and we're grateful for you being here. Thank you, everybody.